Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Salary and Benefits Negotiation 101, brought to you by your Vanderbilt Alumni Association. My name is Kate Graham, and I serve as the Associate Director for Campus Engagement in the Alumni Relations Office, and we are thrilled that you've joined us today. We will give everyone a minute or so to log on, and in the meantime, I want to provide you all with some details about today's webinar. The webinar will last approximately 45 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for Q&A towards the end of the presentation. Should you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to submit them via the chat function. Also, this webinar will be recorded, and we'll add the webinar to our Alumni Association website, as well as send you the direct link via email in the coming days, so be on the lookout for that. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Hallie Crawford. Many of you know Hallie from previous Vanderbilt alumni career offerings, and we are thrilled to have her back to lead today's session. Hallie has been a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert since 2002. Her company, Create Your Career Path, is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and she is regularly featured in the media such as Forbes, CNN, Money Magazine, and Wall Street Journal, and has undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University, as well as the University of Illinois. That's right, go Doors. With over 2,000 success stories, her team of coaches and resume writers help professionals find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning and go to work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Hallie. Thanks so much for leading us today.
Thanks, Kate. I really appreciate it. And I have a special affinity, not just for this topic, but for presenting to fellow alum. I may be older than a lot of the alum today. I graduated in 91, but I'm really pleased to be here with you all today to talk about salary and benefits negotiation. And I know that I think this topic is timely, like all the time, honestly, but it's timely in a lot of ways too, because people are either concerned about being laid off or have been laid off. So for those of you out there who are in that situation, totally understand we're here to help you with that. And today we're going to talk about salary negotiation, but also talking about benefits negotiation and other different kind of scenarios as well. Just as a one quick housekeeping item, if for any reason you all can't hear me or can't see my slides at any point, please let me know, and Kate will hop in and let me know too. And I'll hop off of video. Otherwise, I'm going to stay on that the whole time. And I do have my teenager home for fall break this week. In Atlanta, some of the schools have fall break. He knows I'm doing a webinar, but as evidenced by other webinars I did this week, he thinks closing the door means slamming the door. So anyway, it should be fine. But if you hear something in the background, that's probably what it is. So as Kate said, I'm a certified career coach. I've been coaching and training since 2002. So I feel like I was lucky enough to figure out my career path or my dream job, if you will, early enough in life that I started my business in 2002. And our coaches and resume writers, we love helping people get into the right place professionally, whether it's changing careers, staying where you are and getting to that next level up. We were talking to a woman today who she's had her 20-year anniversary at Georgia Pacific, just happens to live here in Atlanta. And she's like, I'm not in the place I want to be. So part of what we're working with her on is how to move up to that next level and negotiate for a different job title, salary, everything else. The advice we're going to give you today is advice that we give to all of our clients. And one of the first things that we wanted to let you know is that we understand that a lot of people get nervous when they think about or have to deal with or need to, discuss negotiating, whether it's salary or benefits or anything else. It's like not anyone, at least not that many people, I don't think, their favorite thing to do necessarily. And our goal for you is that although It's hard work and things. There are things that we want you to think about to really prepare and make your ask properly. We want you to be as calm and cool and collected as the woman on this screen, where it's not that stressful. So that's our goal for today. And some of the things that you may experience are things like, and these are some of the things that we hear from our clients, why they get nervous about negotiation, is they may suffer from a sense of imposter syndrome. They feel like their success has been due to luck or, a really nice boss or whatever it is. And they don't feel like they deserve moving up, or that they deserve the accomplishments and kudos that they get. Some people just understandably get flat out nervous. They feel like it's almost like a conflict in some way. The other person has control and it makes them really nervous. And others will tell us that they're just not sure what to say and how to make the ask and how to be clear about it and not talk too much, so that they say too much and like diffuse their position, if you will. And one of the main things before we move to the next slide that I really want you to get about this negotiation thing is that your goal at the end of the day is to be able to have an open, direct, two-way conversation with the person that you're negotiating with, to kind of set the stage as much as possible that you're open to having this conversation and you would like to have it in a very honest, upfront, and direct way, so that it's not like, for example, you're putting a number out there and then it's crickets, or they just say, no, we can't do that. So the tools that we're going to talk with you about today can help you move in that direction and to understand that this is a conversation, okay? And it's not something to be nervous about. It's more like, how can I deal with this effectively so that we do have a really effective kind of back-to-back conversation about it. The second thing to keep in mind, or as part of this, is that managers expect negotiation. Most jobs, when you're accepting them, do not expect you to just take their first offer. Now, every once in a while, that's what the organization will say. They may even say it very upfront or in the job posting, like, we have a very strict budget with this. This offering or starting salary is this, and we have no wiggle room. Every once in a while, you'll come across that. And for certain jobs, more so ones that are like entry level, they're not going to expect as much negotiation. But outside of that, the majority of the time, if you look at the statistics here on this slide, most managers and people do expect a negotiation in some way, shape, or form. So we want you to err on the side of at least asking, if nothing else. If you don't ask, you'll never know. So here's our agenda for today, taking a look at this next slide. We're going to give you 10 tips to help you prepare and do some of this background work that we find is really helpful, that will help you make the ask in the right way, and help you be prepared for kind of the back and forth conversation too. Along the way, we're going to discuss topics that we would suggest you consider negotiating. And as Kate said, we will have time at the end for Q&A. If we don't get to your question today, please feel free to write down our email address, because in addition to being willing to share the slides with you all, you can use that email address for that. But we're also happy to answer questions later on if we don't get to it, or if you come up with a question in the next couple of weeks that you'd like to ask, we'd be happy to answer. So just write down that admin at Create Your Career Path, and I'll put it in the chat box as we're talking about this next piece kind of as we go. So there are 3 kind of basic steps that we want you to be thinking about. And I just put the email address in the chat box, that we want you to be kind of focused on and thinking about how to approach all of this. So number 1, to deal with negotiation, we want you to prepare in advance, because that's going to help you not just with the nerves, but also know what to say, know what to ask for, etc. And what we want you to consider in terms of preparation, and we're going to talk a lot about this too and go into greater depth, but we want you to know what your goal is going in, what you want to ask for, and almost what like your top range is and what your bottom range is. So, what's the lowest you're willing to go for this particular job, for example, in terms of salary, but also know what your ideal is so that you've got a range that you can play around with and work through. We want you to review your accomplishments, conduct some research, and ideally, if you have some kind of presentation that you can give them in some way, shape, or form, it doesn't have to be that long. It could be 2 slides, especially if it's more like a negotiation for a promotion at your current position. Whatever the situation is, we do find that in addition to having your resume and your LinkedIn up to date and all of that, it is nice to have some kind of document that you're presenting to them, even if it's an interview for a new job, that you can demonstrate and show, like, these are my strengths and my skills and what I bring to the table. And here's why I feel that, my salary requirements are within this range. The second thing we want you to do that most people don't do, and so this is a really big one, is we want you to anticipate any possible red flags. And what we mean by that is any objections they would have to giving you what you're asking for, anticipate those in advance so that you're ready to respond to them, but you also can incorporate some things and notes and that type of thing, things that you want to say to kind of help address the objections beforehand so that they don't even come up. And any possible concerns they may have about your candidacy. If it's a new job at a new organization, for example, you want to weave in those red flag concerns into some of your star stories, for example. And if you're applying for a leadership position at your current job, let's say, you want to think about, okay, are they going to feel like I'm a leader? How so? And maybe how not? So that you can talk about those kind of in advance too. And then finally, obviously, it's really, really important to be confident. What you say is very important in this process, but it's also about how you say it and how you're coming across. For example, when you're having your negotiation conversation and you're making an ask, jumping ahead just a little bit, we'll talk about this more, but we want you to ask and then be quiet. Don't keep talking and, because you're nervous or whatever, like, make the ask, let them sit with it for a second. So we want you to communicate really effectively, but also very assertively too. Let's talk about our first kind of step here, and then we'll get into our 10 tips as we progress. So the first thing, obviously, that you want to do is be really clear and understand what your goal is, what you want to get out of the negotiation. And what I mean by that is not just, well, I want the promotion or I want this salary, but what else do you want out of it? Like, what's the number salary range that you would like to try to hit? What types of benefits would you like to get out of this? Is it flex work, whatever is going on? So if we've got some kind of options here on this slide, and your goal is going to vary depending on your situation, whether it's a new job or, a performance review and a promotion where you are. And it could depend too on your career stage. So for example, like I said, the woman we were talking to this morning, she's been in her job for 20 years. It's well past time for her to move up further than she is. And that is career stage dependent for her. So there are certain situations, obviously, that we may want to be negotiating. Could be a raise or a promotion, like we said. We may be negotiating a little bit in some ways with our team about our workload, deadlines, projects. And I would say that although we're not going to focus on that a ton today because it's more about salary and benefits, some of the tools that we're going to, or a lot of them, I should say, would be relevant for that situation as well. We want you to think about benefits too, especially when you're negotiating for a new job, that there are other things that you may want to ask for and not just focusing on salary. And in some cases, as part of your ask, you may want to ask for, I'd like you to pay for this certification or part of it, or I'd like to be able to work on this new challenge or whatever. Okay. So when you're identifying your goal, bottom line, be clear on what you want to ask for, a big picture, detail wise as well. And keep in mind that this is going to be situation dependent and also who you're talking to. So you may be talking with HR first to negotiate a little bit about your benefits, but then you go to your boss to talk about the salary. So you also want to kind of consider the source and who you're speaking to as well. As part of identifying your goals, one of the things that we want you to be thinking about that can help you clarify what those are is our career model. If you've been on a webinar with me before, this is the model that we use with all of our clients to help them clarify their career goals, make sure that they're on track with where they should be in their career and in their professional development. It also helps them with their job search to understand their brand. So when you're thinking about what you want, it's a really good idea to think for yourself or ask yourself, I should say, okay, whatever it is I'm going to ask for here, I need to be thinking about what's going to be rewarding and fulfilling to me and making sure I'm asking for things that are going to help me with that, help me continue to enjoy my position, that I'm working on the right tasks and projects. I'm leveraging my strengths, leveraging my education and experience. And whatever this next step is for you, you're wanting to make sure that it's a good fit for your personality type, whether you're more introverted or extroverted, a big picture thinker or more detail oriented, for example, that you're are trying to get into, I should say, or in the right work environment. And then finally, huge important piece, last but not least, is the compensation that you want to have or ask for. And within compensation, we include with that not just the money, it's also about the benefits, flex work, hybrid work, remote work, whatever it is too. So we want you to think about all of those things. Okay, let's talk next about our 10 tips to help you track your accomplishments, understand and clarify your goals, prepare, and also make the ask. So one of the first things that you want to do before a negotiation is you need to make sure that you're really clear about the value you bring to the table. Review your accomplishments, because that's where if they bring up some objection or if they have questions about things, or if you feel you need to say, because of my accomplishments in ABC, then that's part of making the ask and kind of validates the ask. So it's a really good idea outside of your resume to go ahead and have or create an accomplishments document for yourself. And this is just something that's informal, where you write down all of your accomplishments, like in the past couple of years in your professional life. So, and have them be as results oriented as possible, because you may want to include some of those things in your notes or your PowerPoint presentation, the thing that you want to present to them during the course of your conversation. It's a really good idea in your accomplishments document to have measurable results as much as possible. It's a great place to put testimonials and compliments that you get from clients, customers, your boss, etc. Awards that you've gotten, classes that you've taken, experience that you've gotten in the past year or so. Classes, I think what I meant here, the second one is certifications. Apologies for that. But anything that would be a really good relevant accomplishment for this negotiation, we want you to put that on your list so that you're not just prepared to put it into your document, but that you also like have it mentally kind of memorized, and you've got some things that you can put out there when they ask you questions and as you're talking about things. Okay. The second tip is to review to help boost your confidence and understand what these accomplishments are, but also make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn is up to date. Now, if you're already in job search mode and or you're in the throes of interviewing with someone, you've probably already updated your LinkedIn and your resume. Okay, fine. So in your situation, this would be like reviewing it carefully and going through everything. But even if you're going into like a salary negotiation for a promotion or something like that, it's a really good idea to update your materials, because your boss may go look at it or may want to, or that could be something that you present as part of like, here's my updated resume with what I've accomplished in the last year. So you really want to be clear on your accomplishments. And just as a note, kind of side note to your accomplishments, we want you to have like very tangible things on there, like the certifications, software that you've learned, whatever else it is there. But we also want you to put those soft skills, because especially if you're looking for a step up in your career, you need to be talking with them, not just about your expertise and tangible things, but your ability to be a leader, your ability to manage conflict, manage change, lead a team, etc. So you want to make sure you include some of those kind of soft skills too. Update your resume and LinkedIn to represent your accomplishments to date and anything that would be really specific to that particular job too. Personalize it every time for the position that you want, obviously. So we'd love to do our first poll here. And it's, do you keep your resume and LinkedIn up to date? It's okay, by the way, if you say no. Most people don't do that as much. I'm guilty as charged too. I try to update my LinkedIn at least once a year. And I think I probably should do it a little bit more than that. So I need to get better at it too. But this is one of the things that if you do keep it up to date, it can help you with these negotiations because you just have everything, it's fresh in your mind. And that's part of why we like the accomplishments document that's more like a running list though too, because that's where you're keeping track of stuff so that you don't forget certain things that you've accomplished, for example. All right, great. So this is great news. I love this. I feel like in the past year, more and more people are keeping their materials up to date. So we've got a good number of 63%. That's awesome. Keep in mind that you do want to update it, even if you're going for a promotion at work. Update your resume for that promotion and that new job because they may ask you for it. And it may be something that you want to have as like a leave behind, just don't leave anything to chance. And then 38%, this is going to be one of your goals. The people that don't, this is going to be one of your main goals that we'd like you to take on is start working on this because it is going to help you with that piece of things enormously. And the cool thing we find about updating your materials is it boosts your confidence and gets you in touch again with what you bring to the table, what your brand is and your unique selling points. Tip number 3 is going into a negotiation. Don't go in blindly without any sense of or consideration to what's going on right now in the economy, what's going on within this particular industry, or maybe even within my organization. You want to read the room a little bit. Are they thriving? Are they struggling? Are they actively hiring or not? What's going on? Can I ask for more than I normally would, or does it need to be less? Because, hey, a lot of people just got laid off, this summer or whatever it is. So think about and just consider the context of your ask and what else is going on. Because a couple of things that we want you to consider is at the bottom here. Number 1, consider what you would ask for as a backup if you can't get exactly what you're asking for. We had a client once who they were about $2,000 off for the salary that they could offer her. And so what she said instead, she said, okay, she accepted it because they had already gone back and forth and they said that was their bottom line number. But she asked for being able to work from home twice a week, save money on gas, etc. They said yes, and it worked out. The second thing that you want to think about is also that if they can't give you these things right now, is it something that you can say in that moment, can we discuss this in 6 months? If I accept this now, because I understand, there's a lot going on with the organization, could we set a time or at least make a commitment to talk about this more like in 6 months based on my performance? That's another way that will give you a little bit of wiggle room just in case. Tip number 4 is to do your homework, whether it's salary research or benefits research. So technically, we want you to do both. And we always have people obviously start with salary research first because that's just kind of the most common thing. But you also would want to be aware of the type of benefits that are normally provided within your industry as well. So for example, and also, like if you're at the beginning of your career or more senior. So don't go in there obviously asking for a ton of vacation days if this is a brand new job for you and it's, your first job out of college, for example. So just consider those things too. And certain industries are going back to the office full-time in person and that's it. And so you also need to pay attention to that. Like, is this the type of industry where I could work remotely and it could be effective? And maybe you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to not worry about remote work at the beginning, but I might, talk with them about it in 6 months and talk about, okay, the performance has been good. Would there be a chance to have a little bit more of a flexible schedule? So let's take a look at this slide. A couple of things and resources that we like for salary research are glassdoor.com and payscale.com. Another one that can be helpful is the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. That's a really good resource for a salary comparison and kind of giving salary range too. We think it's reasonable to ask other people that you know well enough. You don't have to go in asking them exactly what they make because sometimes obviously that can be awkward, but you could ask them and say, I'm looking for this salary range. Is that kind of reasonable? What do you think? And when you're negotiating for a new job, and even I would say for a promotion, you can ask them up front, what is the salary range for this position? I'm asking for X amount. This is verbiage you can use. Is that within the range for this position? Because I'm open to talking about this a little bit more. I'm very interested in the job and I'm open to discussion here. That's the type of thing that you can say to people to help kind of set the stage, like we were saying earlier, for it being a two-way street conversation and not just, this is what I want, they say yes or no, and that's it. Like, use language that sets the stage to let them know, I'm asking for this range. Can we discuss this further? As part of your salary research, you can also use these types of things. What is the benefits package offered? Is there flexibility for what is budgeted for this position? These are questions you could use to get a little bit more information from them. And when you're adding up your compensation, so two things, and let me just go back here really quickly because I forgot to mention this. Research the standard salary for both your current position and your desired position, because this can help tell you whether you are over or underpaid based on your industry standard and your location. And then that can help inform what you might ask for. Because, for example, if you know that you are very highly compensated and at the top end of your range for what you do, you may go in there with a little bit more of a range. And, for example, what you're making now could be at the top end of what you're asking for, again, depending on what you're going for. Okay, so going back to this slide with the salary research, when and if they ask you anything about, what your benefits compensation package is now, you need to know the laws in your state, because in some states and a lot of them, they're not allowed to ask you that. But if it comes up somehow informally, etc., you want to add up or have in your mind for your current salary, you want to include your benefits in that number. So your total compensation number should not just be your salary, but it should also be how much is your insurance worth, health insurance and everything else. Okay. If you are going to talk about or ask for any variation of remote work, part of what you're going to want to do is have examples in your resume and in your conversation with them about how you've been successful in your experience with and able to work remotely, and show those results. Okay. And keeping in mind too, like, what other things do you want to negotiate? If you can work remotely, would you be willing to accept a little bit lower salary? This bleeds right into tip number 5. And this is just basically making sure that you're thinking big picture with your negotiations. What are some other things and perks that you would take into consideration if they can't get you to the exact salary number you want? Some of these things may be worth it for you, whether it's remote work or flex time, stock options, maybe you're vested a little bit sooner. That could be something that you try to negotiate, vacation time, family leave, those types of things. Now, keep in mind that companies are going to have policies about these things. And in some cases, it's going to be like, this is our policy, we can't budge. And they're always going to want to be careful about, giving you something and they don't give it to somebody else. So you just have to keep that in mind too. But in my book, again, it's worth asking, because even if that exact thing they can't give you, like, there could be something related to that they actually can. And that helps you guys kind of think outside the box a little bit more for possibilities. And it, again, helps it be that two-way street conversation, as we've been talking about. As part of this line of thinking, we want you to negotiate for opportunity, not just for money. In some cases, this new job for you could give you maybe really good growth opportunities, because this is going to be a better organization and there's a lot more wiggle room to move up. It may be that you're going to get to work on new or different kind of projects that's going to add to your expertise and your repertoire. So it's worth it because of that. So think also, when you're negotiating, not just about the bottom line and the numbers, but think also about, what are the opportunities that I can gain here? And is that worth something to me? And are there certain opportunities that I'd like to ask for up front? Because that's going to help me boost my resume as well. Okay. So remember the total package that's listed here at the bottom and make a priorities list for yourself so that you know exactly what you want to be asking for, but kind of where things fall on the list of priorities for you as well. Let's talk next about tip number 6. This one is obvious. And I think in some cases for people, it can be one of the hardest things. So we wanted to bring this up. It's critically important to be really confident when you're making your ask, whether it's in person or remote, like you're, doing this over Zoom meeting. Remember that your attitude affects your actions, which then affects your outcome. We all know how we feel when we're like rocking and rolling and we feel great, for example, going into a networking event, how many more people we meet, good connections we make, etc. It's the same thing here. So it's a really good idea too, to actually have something tangible, like a process that you go through, whether it's a couple of things, it doesn't have to be that long, that boosts your confidence before you go into this conversation. Is it an affirmation? Do you visualize how you want the interview or the conversation to go? Make sure that you're dressing for the job that you want, not the one that you have, so that you're more formal in some cases, etc. And by the way, as a separate line item related to confidence, it is okay to have notes for you to remind yourself of things that you wanted to ask or things that you wanted to consider. And it's okay to have to look at those notes maybe a couple of times during the conversation. People don't expect you to have every single thing memorized necessarily. So it's okay to jot those notes down in advance to help you prepare so that you have some of it memorized, but then also to remind you of things during the course of the conversation. One of the things I did, and I was so pleased with how effective it was for me when I was going into my coach certification exam. This was a long time ago. It's probably like 20 years ago, but it was an exam that was in person at the time. And basically you had to take a written exam for about half an hour, something like that, on coaching skills, etc. And then you also had to go into a room with a panel of 3 coaches who were judging you, and it was pass or fail. And you had to coach 3 people that you hadn't met before on topics that you had no idea what they were going to throw out to you. And each of those people, you coached them, I think it was like 15 minutes or something like that. And it was pretty nerve-wracking. But I had like visualized 2 weeks in advance. I just kind of like thought about it every once in a while during the course of my day about how I wanted to go. And I had like an affirmation that I wanted to pass with flying colors. And I just remember that using that, like I thought about it in advance when I was walking into the room, etc. And it just got me into a much calmer place than I think I would have been otherwise. I passed, obviously, and got the highest kind of ranking out of everyone that day. But I really do think that affirmation was critical, and kind of the visualization of how I wanted to feel, how I wanted it to go. It made a difference. So I encourage you to try this. As part of tip number 6 in being confident, a couple of other things that you can do is you can, if you've got these negative thoughts that come up for you either during the course of the conversation and negotiation or beforehand, push them aside. Practice in front of the mirror about what you want to say during the course of your conversation. Review your list of accomplishments. There's lots of different things. Some of our clients will have like a pump them up playlist that helps them get into a really good mindset before things like this. And remember that you've got these kind of taglines, these things that you can say to them to let them know you'd like this to be a discussion. I'm open to discussing options. I'm open to discussing this further. This is not saying to them, I'm open to like dropping my price, $10,000. It's simply letting them know that, look, I'm open to talking about this. This is important to me. I'd really like to have a direct conversation about it. The more you use stuff like this, the more you all can have a collaborative discussion about it, and it takes some of the pressure off. If you feel like you need more help with this or anything else related to finding your dream job, job search, etc., career coaching, and helping you with your performance and getting that, next, doing well with your performance review and getting that promotion, we always offer a free consult if you'd like to learn more about our services. It's the same email address that's in the chat where you can get the slides. And we always offer a discount for a Vanderbilt alum as well. So feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk with you further to find out how we can help you, if it's the right fit, et cetera, et cetera. Let's look next at tip number 7. And I find this one can be incredibly important. We touched on it a little bit earlier about identifying those soft skills. So make sure that whenever you are negotiating for anything, you're not just talking about those tangible things, but you're talking about the soft skills as well. Because when employers and recruiters are surveyed about why they hire someone, they always list soft skills. It's because they seem like they had a really strong work ethic. They would fit really well within our organization and our environment. They have the same values that we do. Those are the types of things that you want to reference, because that can help kind of push you over the edge for getting the job, getting that new position. And one of the things, and this is going to be, I would say, a little more relevant for a new job, but it also can help with getting a promotion, et cetera, is it's a really good idea to create and present to them a brief draft. It doesn't have to be extensive, but a 30, 60, 90-day plan that you present to say, this is what I would do if I was hired. I just wanted to share this with you. If we have time to go over it today, that would be great. If not, I'd love to leave it behind with you. But I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of how I would approach things and how I think. This type of leadership thinking, having something prepared like this in advance, is really compelling for prospective employers. So consider this as one of your possible action items. And when you're working on your leadership strengths and thinking about these soft skills, you can use this wheel to help identify what some of yours are. You can rate yourself in each area, identify the top 3 areas of strength. We have clients also interview other people about these, because sometimes there may be something that you don't realize you're as good at as you actually are. So we like that as well. Tip number 8 is to make sure, and we've kind of talked about this along the way a little bit, but with all of the preparation that you're doing, make sure that you prepare your presentation, if you will. So as we said, sorry, I just got to itch my eyes here. As we said, we want this to be like a two-way discussion and two-way street, but we would rather you be prepared in advance with the kind of I don't want to say argument, because that's the wrong word, but with the case that you're making for why you deserve XYZ. Okay. So prepare some kind of spiel so that you're ready there. And you can have different things depending on the situation and scenario. We talked about your resume already. You may have a quick PowerPoint that you want to present, like we said earlier, that includes your 30, 60, 90-day plan, but also has at the beginning a quick review of some of the marketing projects you worked on and what some of the results were. You can have a portfolio if it's relevant to your industry and your role of your experience and skills. You may even have and want to bring your StrengthsFinder results and talk about and weave that into the interview conversation. And we've had clients who bring in like a quick and short and sweet brag book into their interview as a leave behind. And it's really good because it helps you kind of walk through certain things, but it's also something that they can look at later to help kind of round out your candidacy and your argument. Tip number 9, and we'll go ahead and launch our next poll here if we could, is to be really clear on your ask. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit already, so we'll be a little bit shorter with this one. But again, as we said, we want you to be clear on exactly what you're asking for. Do not beat around the bush and be as specific as you possibly can. At the end of the conversation, you want to say, based on these things, I'm asking for X. Is that within your range? That's language that you can use. Then, as we said earlier, be quiet and wait for them to digest and respond. Don't keep talking. If they don't mention the salary range, it's okay to go ahead and ask. Don't ask it in interview number 1, but go ahead and ask, what is the range for this position? Do you mind if I ask what that is, as well as some of the benefits? And include some of your salary research with your range. You can say, I did a little bit of homework and research, and this is kind of the range I'm asking for based on my qualifications and skills, but based on also what I know is kind of normal for the market. So poll number 2, awesome. We're seeing the results. That's great. 72% have done so, which is great because there's so many more resources out there. I think more people do this, which is awesome. We referenced in one of the earlier slides some of the sites we like. If anyone else has other sites that they've used for salary research, we would love to see those in the chat box just to help each other out in case there's other things that you have found helpful. So we can add this to the list for some of those people out there that need to do a little bit more of this research. One thing I want to say, excuse me, about the research is keep in mind that in some cases, you're going to get a really big range. We still want you to do the research, but then that's where talking with other people and getting a sense from colleagues at other organizations, et cetera, can help you narrow things down a little bit more. And some industries and roles are not going to have as many numbers out there, just not as much research that's out there. So remember that this research, it's not going to be perfect. It's one tool to help you with all of these different components. Tip number 10, and this is our last tip, but we've got a few slides related to it and some closing things before we get to Q&A. So please go ahead and start putting your questions in the chat box, and we'll deal with those in just a moment. Practice dealing with those red flags. So if they bring them up at the end, or to help allay those concerns coming up during the course of the conversation, you want to weave those into your presentation and your talk with them. So if they've got concerns about, well, this person doesn't have as much experience in my industry, for example, talk about your transferable skills and experience and relate it to the job that you're looking at. Have some testimonials in your presentation or that you share and talk about with them about how well you dealt with ABC or learning new software if, for example, you don't know the software that they're using. So there's different ways to kind of deal with those scenarios. And we'd like you to kind of front load the conversation with those things in there before it becomes a possible issue in their mind, if possible. And one of the concerns sometimes for employers is they might be concerned that you're going to ask for a higher salary than they're ready for. You can let them know, if you're okay with it, that you're open to discussing or negotiating on salary. And these are two things at the bottom of this slide that you could say to deal with that and let them know that. If you're not in that boat, you can use the text that we said before where you're like talking about, I'm open to discussing this topic and I really would like to do so. So you can let them know about the salary range a little bit more upfront. As part of tip number 10, we want you to practice with someone else, practice on video camera if the negotiation is going to be there. And we'll go ahead and launch our last poll here if we could. Do you have someone you can practice with? Because it can help enormously, because you just don't know like what your nonverbals are and how you're actually coming across when you're talking about this stuff. I wave my hands around a lot. So even in live presentations, I hold a pen. I'm holding one now because that helps keep me from being too animated. I'm very animated as it is, and sometimes that can be distracting. So when you're thinking about your nerves and practicing, come up with some tricks and tips that you can use to help you be in a calm place. Pay attention to your nonverbals. Sit up straight in a confident way. Prepare and advance affirmations, like we said, and practice with someone either live and in person or on Zoom, whatever's going to be appropriate for your situation. But make sure you do it where they can see you so that they can see what your facial expressions are, et cetera. Good numbers here, 59% for someone that can help you. That's great. Thanks for participating in all of these polls today. We appreciate it. And 41% don't. It's usually easy to find a friend or family member that can help you out. That's why we're here to help you with this as well. Feel free to reach out to us, but just make sure, bottom line, that you practice. And finally, before we get to our Q&A, we want you, obviously, not just want you to, but the last step is to conduct the meeting and the negotiation and make sure that there's follow-up as part of it too. So a couple of reminders here. Make sure that with your ask, you're tying your accomplishments and your value to the bottom line. Companies, yes, hopefully they care about their employees and their happiness, et cetera. But at the end of the day, they care about their bottom line and the numbers, right? So make sure that you tie all of your accomplishments to the tangible impact that it made within your current organization or your previous job. Provide those results as much as possible. Include those testimonials, kudos. Be prepared to provide a range of salary that you're asking for. Don't make it personal. So if it starts to get a little bit awkward during the course of the conversation, slow yourself down. Take a step back for a second, pause for a minute if you need to. Excuse yourself to go to the restroom. In person, that's a little bit more easy to do, obviously, than a Zoom meeting. That would be awkward. So don't do it in that scenario. But just do some deep breathing to calm yourself down if it does get a little bit awkward or you're feeling tense. And make sure that you're not talking too much. Never bash your former employer. Just make sure, again, like we said, you want it to be a two-way conversation as much as possible. And as a follow-up at the end of the negotiation, regardless of what happened, you want to thank them. If nothing else, thank them for their time. Make sure that you ask about and decide together what your next steps are. Is there another interview? Are you waiting to hear back from them about when that interview is? If it's a salary negotiation for getting a promotion, and you've talked about a possible new title, but there wasn't a decision made, have a conversation about when can we regroup to talk about this and make a final decision. What are the next steps, probability and timeline on things too. So close the loop during the course of conducting the meeting when you're talking with them. Okay, let's go to our last slide, and this is our Q&A slide. What we'd love for you to do first is to get out your pen and write down one thing that you'll take action on in the next week. There are some ideas on this slide here. The email address is in the chat for the slides, as well as the strategy session consult, same thing. And by the way, and this got cut off a little bit. I shouldn't have put that so far down. We've got a really great boot camp that starts next week. The 2 sessions are going to be Tuesday and Thursday of next week. It's the 17th and 19th. This is a fantastic program because it talks a lot more and piggybacks on what we're talking about today, but will help you nuts to bolts with the beginning to end of your job search, how to stay organized during your search, creative tips and tricks to get in front of employers on LinkedIn, because there are things that you can do there. How to update your resume and your LinkedIn, write a cover letter, how to use AI in your search. So lots of really good things with our boot camp next week. It's those 2 sessions. I believe it's at 1 Eastern time, 12 noon, and Kate can correct me if that's wrong. And she's going to put a link, and just did actually, in the chat to check it out and register. We would encourage you, send this to friends and family members if they would be interested, because we're happy to help anyone, whether they're an alum or not. And we know a lot of people out there need help with their job search. It comes with a lot of great tools and resources too, which people find incredibly helpful, like LinkedIn templates and resume templates as well. The sessions will be recorded, so if you miss one, you can make it up. And we have them be live interactive sessions so that during each call, you can ask questions of me as well. And they're usually in a good way, like small groups, so you get really good individual attention. Okay, let's talk about our questions in the chat box. Thank you for asking. As a starting point. One person asked, should you ask about salary range if it's not posted in the job ad? Yes, you should ask about that. You don't want to ask about it necessarily up front. Usually up front, it's more of a screening call. Sometimes in the screening call, though, in the first interview, they may ask you about your salary range. So you want to be prepared for it in the first call, just in case it comes up, so you're not caught off guard. But if it's not listed in the ad, which often it's not, it's okay to go ahead and ask about it, like at the end of your second interview, for example, as things progress a little bit further. So you definitely want to ask because you need to know it at some point, just not usually at the very beginning. Another person asked, and let me just open this up a little bit more so I can see the whole thing. In markets where the salary range must be disclosed in job listings legally, which does exist, thank you for that, how do you deal with remote roles that then ask for your comp range? Would they prefer not to point out that they need to disclose given the candidate's location? Oh, would prefer not to point out that they need to disclose. So if someone asks you what your range is, yeah, I would, if it were me, I'd be inclined to give them something, because you need something to work from. And if you're concerned about, okay, is it going to be different because it's remote work or not? I would kind of stick with the same or very similar salary range to in-person work as well, because technically you're doing the same type of work. So if I'm reading your question correctly, and if I'm not, please feel free to provide a little bit more there. But I would be, more inclined to at least answer the question, just because you need to keep the conversation going. And I would have my range be pretty close to what it would be for in person as well. And again, add a little bit more there if I'm missing the question. Another person said and asked, I negotiated a new project or responsibility, but want to ask for the compensation to match. How should I counter if they threaten to remove that responsibility? So first of all, I don't like that they're threatening like that. That makes me a little concerned about where you're working and if it's a good kind of solid, healthy place to work. I could be totally wrong, just putting that out there. If they are threatening, if they do threaten to remove it, and you really want that, and you're okay with going back to, no, I don't have to have it if that's not an option, I would just put it out there as, I would love to have this new opportunity. Here's what I'd like to ask for and why I feel this is a valid, reasoning and kind of argument, if you will, for why this would be worth it. And if they say, no, we can't do that, and otherwise we're going to take it away, it's okay to say, okay, no problem. Is it something that we could reconsider or revisit in like 6 months, or is that not an option? Put something out there. Could it be revisited later on? Or you could simply say, that's okay. I wanted to at least ask because it is going to be more responsibility. And I hope you understand why I'm asking that. Something like that, short and sweet. Okay, the next one is Kate put the link for the job search boot camp in there. So check that out, please. Love to have you there. Another question is, what is the best approach to answering what is your desired salary in a job application to keep the door open without limiting your negotiating options further down the line? This is a great question too. If possible, I would put a range in there of, about like $5,000 to $7,000, give or take. More than that, I think, is way too big. But I would try to put a range in that so that you've got that, kind of wiggle room. Another person asked, can you ask about it to decide if it's worth your time applying? Well, no, well, that's a really good question. You can ask up front, but be prepared that they may be like, you're asking that way too soon, and that's not incredibly professional, so that they might not bring you in for an interview. So if it were me, I wouldn't ask up front like that. I would apply, do your salary research to find out a little bit more of a range, and then decide based on that whether to apply or not. Use the research for that purpose instead. Another person asked, let's say they offer 100K, but salary research suggests 150 would be more reasonable. What amount above 100K is appropriate to ask for? 100K went from the end too high of an ask. Yeah, 150 is way too big of a jump. I might ask for more around like the 125 range or something like that. It's very situational. It depends on your location, the job title, and your relevant experience, if you've got it or not. But I would kind of split the difference a little bit. Oftentimes compensation is discussed as salary, not total comp. How do you draw out total comp ranges? Yeah, it's not always going to just get discussed until you're more or closer to the formal offer stage. But I would go ahead and ask at a reasonable time, like halfway through as you're getting closer to that, and saying, would you mind sending me a breakdown of the complete benefits and compensation package, just so that I know exactly what I'm looking at here? And they ought to be able to provide that and shouldn't be offended by it. In markets where they have to post salary ranges, should these be viewed as reliable market comp data, or are these numbers gamed? I think it is, relatively speaking, reliable, but I do think in some cases they're going to be gamed. I would go or err on the side of assuming that it's reliable data to a certain extent. But for example, if your range is completely out of that, and you know that most people from your salary research, for example, get paid in the range that you're in, then you can know that it's gamed and they're just kind of floating something out there. And then finally, before we head out for today, Kate put a survey link in the chat box, and we would really love for you to complete that survey because we want to hear how we can continue to improve our programming. We really appreciate that. And there is another question. And then before we go, Kate, if you'd like to share some final words, that would be great too. So here's our last question is, should you always ask for more than you actually want during negotiations, assuming that the company will always come back with a lower offer? Yes, pretty much, unless it's going to boot you out of the running. And you know that like asking for that number is going to be like, they're not going to talk to you anymore because it's just way too high. I would always aim a little bit higher because you know that most likely there's going to be a little bit of that negotiating. And you want to be sure that you can't kind of go back and say, well, now I want to ask for more. It's always going to go down to a certain extent, or it usually will. But hey, even better, if they, match what you've asked for, then you got it. That's fantastic. Okay, so before we go, Kate, anything else you want to say besides survey, anything else about upcoming programs, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting my chats in the chat box. Like Hallie mentioned, please complete our survey. We'd love to hear your feedback and ideas for our future programming and webinars. And also, again, like Hallie mentioned, I included the link to our alumni career resources page where you can find the link to register for the boot camp next week. So go ahead and sign up for that, and myself and then Hallie's team will get you more information, so that way you're prepared for next week's boot camps. And then also, like I mentioned in the intro comments, we will send a follow-up email with the link to this recording, as well as some resources and contact information for Hallie. So if you have any additional questions or want to follow up, that'll be provided in the coming days later this week. But Hallie, thank you so much again. Always appreciate you leading us in these webinars, and thank you to everyone who attended for the engaging questions and feedback. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, really good ones. And if I could just say really quick before we go to Kate and for everyone, if you have a question about the boot camp and want to know a little bit more about, is this going to be included or anything else, please don't hesitate to email me. I'm happy to explain more. We tried to put as much as we could there, but if you've got a specific thing you want to know about it, just email me at the admin@Create Your Career Path. I'm happy to answer.
Awesome. Yes, definitely do.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great remainder of your Thursday, and we'll see you next time.
Okay, sounds
Thanks,
good.
Hallie.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
You're welcome.